Thank Hashem that we're able to learn. As chus of learning, we should have the base of Mikdash immediately. Should be for Shlema for all those that need. Yechiel Nassim ben Sarah and David Levi ben Menucha de Lester, Avram Rafal ben Sarah, Asher Anshel Levi ben Miriam Adel and Sarah Basnuni. Okay, let's start today. Ches Amar Aleph, the second to the top line. It says Amar Mar. Amar Mar. The master taught. That's the way we go back to explain something from a Tanaic source. We mentioned it, but we didn't explain it. We go back to explain it. Sometimes the Amar Mar is because we quoted a brisa. So we're going to go back and explain the brisa that we just quoted. We quoted it for another reason, but there were details in there that we didn't explain. Usually an Amar Mar is not going back to explain the Mishnah. The Mishnah would have two dots, and it would quote it. And then it would have two dots at the end, like a colon. And then it would explain it. Over here, for some reason, it didn't do that. It says, Amar Mar. We quote the Mishnah. Unless maybe it's a brisa that they're quoting. That could be. It must be quoting the brisa. Must be. That's the answer to it. It's quoting the brisa. The same words are in the brisa.
It says brisa here.
Yeah. There you go. See, if I would look in there, I would have all the answers. But now I know it better. Yeah, you have to make the mistake first. So Amar Mar, we learned in the brisa, Basil says that the Chagigah could be purchased with Meiser money. We're talking about Yom Tov Rishon Shel Pesach. The Chagigah, Beis Shammai said it needs to be Chulin, and Basil says it could be Meiser. The Gemara has a question. Amai. This is problematic. Davar shebechayvahu. V'chol davar shebechayva ein bala min hachulin. You have an obligation to bring it. It needs to be from regular money. You can't pay off your debts or pay off your obligations, pay up your obligations with Meiser money. Meiser would mean the tie that was exchanged from the grain, and it was Meiser Sheni, it's brought to Yerushalayim. You can't use that money for obligations. So Amar Ula b'Teifel. Ula gives us the answer. It says what Beis Hillel means is not that it's brought entirely from Meiser. It means that it's brought from a mixture of Meiser and Chulin.
So it's like you want to buy a bigger cow.
Yeah. You combine the funds to buy something bigger. That's the idea. Now, it's not so clear that it's funds. We have to see. So now, after Ula tells us that, now we have a machlekes how exactly this is done. It's a machlekes between Chizkiah and Rabbi Yochanan. Chizkiah amar teiflin behema lebehema, vein teiflin mayis lemayis. Chizkiah says you can't actually combine funds. What you do is you have to have an entire animal that's brought from Chulin. That way you're yotze your original obligation. That animal wasn't enough for everyone, so you bring another animal from Meiser. But the basic obligation you fulfilled with an animal of Chulin. Rabbi Yochanan amar teiflin mayis lemayis vein teiflin behema lebehema. Yeah, I don't know what the problem should be, but he says it's much better if you combine the funds, but not to add another animal from Meiser. Combine the funds for the first animal to buy a larger animal. Why would he not want behema lebehema? Sounds like it's so easy. I guess what Rabbi Yochanan wants is that the Chagigah is going to be eaten by a bunch of people, and everyone should have their obligation fulfilled with a little bit of Chulin money in there. So that way the Chulin money is spread out throughout all of the animals, instead of having one animal was chulin purely and one animal is meiser purely, it would be better if there was chulin combined into everything. That's what it sounds like. Yeah. So it's machlekes how this is done. Chizkiah, it's machlekes Chizkiah and Rabbi Yochanan. Was Chizkiah a son of Reb Chia? Is that who Chizkiah was? It was a son of Rebbe or a son of, no, it was a son of Reb Chia. I think so. Okay. Tanya Kavasei de Chizkiah, Tanya Kavasei de Rabbi Yochanan. We have a brisa that supports both of them. We have to see. It says Tanya Kavasei de Rabbi Yochanan. Yeah, Ramesh, you see, we start with the second one.
Yeah.
Does that sometimes. It says in the pasuk misas. The pasuk says, "Vasisa chag hashvuos l'Hashem Elokecha misas nidvas yadcha." The misas means the measurement of your gift, of your generosity, of however much you're going to give. Now the Gemara understands misas, the measurement. We're going to see later how we get this, but the Gemara understands that misas means that it has to be chulin. So the Brisa says, Malamed, from that word, it teaches us celebrating the holiday. It says it's Malamed Shadam Mevi Chayvasei Menachulin, that he brings it from chulin, he brings his obligation, which is the Chagigah. Minayin Shimratza La'ariv Ma'ariv, how do you know that you're allowed to mix in? Now the word Ma'ariv would only be used if it was combining money, combining the funds, not combining animals. The reason is because two animals it's not really a mixture, because you see one is here and one is here. The money would have become a taruvais, a mixture. So how do you know that you're allowed to mix in money, other money, which means meiser money? As Hashem blesses you, as Hashem your God blesses you, which means you have other funds. You have from the meiser sheni that you can mix in as well. Okay. So from the word misas, which is chulin, and from the word ma'ariv, which means money, we learn that you're allowed to combine meiser together with kasher v'recha, that you're allowed to combine meiser funds. Support to Rabbi Yochanan. Tani Kavasei de Chizkiah. Now we have a brisa that supports Chizkiah. Chizkiah said that you combine animals, not funds. One animal would have been chulin, and another animal would have been from meiser sheni. It says over here like this: misas. Same pasuk. A person can bring his obligation only from chulin, only from mundane money, not from meiser money. He's talking about the carbon chagigah. Beishamai explains, they say that Yom Rishon min hachulin mikan ve'elach min meiser. The first day of Yom Tov has to be entirely chulin. That's the ikar chiyuv. After that, you can bring from meiser. That's Beishamai's opinion. Beisila says no. Even on the first day, it's only the first eating that comes from chulin. The Gemara thinks at this point that when it says the first eating, it means the first animal. And the Gemara thinks that this is a support for Chizkiah. The first animal comes from chulin. Even and on the first day, you can and then you can add more animals from meiser. Even on the first day of Yom Tov, which that's the ikar chagigah. Okay, that's a support for Chizkiah that says that you add other animals, not combine the funds even for the first animal. Then the brisa goes on. It says v'shar kol yemaisa Pesach. Pesach is not necessarily Pesach. It means the rest of the days of the holiday. Adam yotzi yedei chayvasei b'meiser behema. Okay, now we're introducing another type of meiser here. We weren't discussing that before. Till now we were discussing meiser sheni, which is grain that was exchanged for money, and you go to Yerushalayim and you exchange it back for animals. That was the meiser. Now we're talking about the rest of the days of Yom Tov. If you want to have shlamim, if you want to eat from a sacrifice, it could be meiser behema. Every 10th animal that was born that year, you take a red paint and it walks through a fence, like an opening in a fence. And the 10th one, you put on it some red paint, and that's going to be the meiser. Okay, it's brought as a sacrifice. the owners are eat from that sacrifice. So the rest of the days of Yom Tov, you can use Meiser Behema. The Gemara asks, the Yom Tov my time aloi. Why couldn't you use Meiser Behema on the first day? That's the Gemara's question. It says, Amar Rav Ashi, Dil Masi Lasuri be Yom Tov. Maybe you're going to take Meiser on Yom Tov. You're not allowed to take Meiser on Yom Tov. Well, why not? There's a problem of painting. Can't paint the animal on Yom Tov. Okay. I thought we had other problems of separating on Yom Tov. Yeah, Taisus asked that. Yeah, we had other issues, but whatever the case is, there's a problem with Yom Tov. The malacha of
we just learned this a little while ago about
Tzeveya. I don't know. It's coloring the material, the hair. Tzeveya is one of the malachas, no? Maybe then it's only a derabanan.
Didn't we learn about this in the Gemara right before? Wasn't Megillah before Megillah? He said it was a specific time when you would do
Ma'aser Behema.
right.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Maybe that's why the Gemara is talking about Pesach.
What was it? I don't remember what the
Yeah,
time,
what it
the
had to
time we
do
were supposed
was,
to do it.
but there was in Rosh Hashanah we said that a certain, I think Nisa is one of the Rosh Hashanahs was for Ma'aser Behema. Remember which one is it in here? No. So we said that was the cutoff point. It's maybe Bechabel or something.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking. Why would you in this situation? You were supposed to have done your count, 2 months ago.
Yeah. But maybe he already has 10 animals and he wants to start to. Well, actually, I don't think you had to, I don't know if Meiser Behema you had to wait to take the Meiser before you were allowed to use the no, maybe yeah. Maybe you had to take the Meiser before you were allowed to use the other ones. Yeah. So he wanted to start using them. So he takes one as Meiser Behema. He's in already by the base of Mikdash. He brings it and he eats it on Yom Tov. Or Chalamayid, he eats it as shlamim. Okay. My mashma dahai misas lishna dechulinu. How did you get on the original brisa? We said that misas means that it's chulin, the measurement. Well, the ksiv, look at this. Vayosam hamelech Achashverosh mas al haaretz. Achashverosh puts a tax on the people. It's the end of the Megillah. Puts a tax on the people, and the tax has to be paid, of course, with chulin. Okay, that's our source. Interesting source.
What we said here. I gotta see this. He says, so here we learn that he has to do, right? How do you learn anything from that? It's to say twice in the pasuk. It's an extra. How do we learn anything from that?
No, the context of misas means that it's mundane money.
We know the whole pasuk.
Yeah, misa. Well, it says misas nidvas yadcha, from the measurement, from the amount of your donation.
Funny word, like, how do you
Yeah, it's a
learn
funny
anything?
word.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so based on that, we say, oh, that means chulin. Okay, Taner Rabbana was taught in a brisa. V'samachta b'chagecha. I've heard that before. Should rejoice on your holiday and your celebration. L'rabbis kol minei smachos l'simcha. This includes many types of simcha, many types of rejoicing. Mikan amar chachamim, from this the sages said, Yisrael yetzin yedei chavasim b'nedarim v'nedavos ma'aser behema. It's not just that you have one carbon chagigah. You can have not just a carbon chagigah to rejoice. You can have all of your donations that you had pledged throughout the year that you're gonna, when you go to the base of Mikdash, you're gonna bring it, and all of that is all added to the rejoicing. B'samachta, you have these extra simchas b'chagecha on the holiday. So you have other types of simcha. Ba'akayanim, what are the kayanim? They have even more. They have b'chatas v'ashim b'char b'chazav v'sheik. They have everyone else's sacrifices that they don't eat from. The owners don't eat from. The kayanim get to eat from it. The sin offerings, the guilt offerings, the b'char. and what's raised from the other animals, the chest and the thigh. Maybe simcha would also apply to birds that are brought to the base of Mikdash, the dove and the turtle dove, and also the flour offerings, the meal offerings. No, that doesn't count. It says v'samachta b'chagecha. What does that tell us? We're on top of Chesamid Beis. Misha Chagigah ba mehem. Yatsa elu shein Chagigah ba mehem. When it says b'chagecha, it's referring to Chagigah, the holiday celebration. Now, regarding the carbon Chagigah, it says chelev chagi, layolin chelev chagi ad baker. You can't leave over the fats of the Chagigah until the morning. Now, only an animal would have fats. So now we're going back to say v'samachta b'chagecha. We're saying that every other animal, every other simcha has to be the same like the Chagigah, which just like that is an animal, also the simcha is an animal. It's not birds or meal offerings. That's first shot. Ravashi says, mi v'samachta nafka. Ravashi says, I know it from the word itself. It says when you rejoice. There's no simcha in eating chicken and flour. Yeah. Some could debate this. I forget, my kids had a song about yeshiva. It went something like, on Monday for dinner was chicken and rice. On Tuesday for dinner was chicken and, it was a tune that they would sing, but basically it was chicken and rice every, went through the whole week. Yes, okay, that's what it is.
On Shabbos, you get a special.
And then on Shabbos, Shabbos also.
It's grommet. It goes like chicken and rice, chicken and rice, chicken and rice, chicken and rice.
Oh yeah.
Chicken and rice. It's like a grommet. It goes for the whole week of the same dinner every day in yeshiva.
Yeah, something like that. Okay. They're doing fine. Okay. So Ravashi says that's not simcha. Yeah. Ravashi, hi bechagecha mayavidle. What about the brisa? That was a nice limud that we said the Chagigah needs to be an animal. Also simcha has to be the animal. What does he do with that word chagecha? He says, Ahu look at Rav Daniel Bar Katina, Damar Rav Daniel Bar Katina, Amar Rav. It's taught in the name of Rav. Minayin she'nais nashim b'mayit. How do you know that you're not allowed to get married on Yom Tov? We had this in Mayit Katan. We said, Shenemar v'samachta b'chagecha v'loy b'ishtecha. You rejoice with the holiday. And if you're just recently married, then you're going to be, your whole emphasis is going to be that you're rejoicing with your wife. Now, you're supposed to rejoice with your whole family, but it's supposed to be a rejoicing around the holiday, not just a rejoicing around the new marriage. So we had other limudim, but this was one of them. Ravashi would accept that limud, that teaching. Okay, we're holding by the Mishnah. You see that? Someone has a large family, a lot of mouths to feed, but he doesn't have a lot of possessions. So when he goes to the base of Mikdash, so it's better for him to maybe shlamim merubim va'ilais muatais. He should bring, most of his things should be shlamim because everyone gets to eat, right? There's more food there. And the oilas, which is entirely burnt, that should just be a few. Yeah, the Gemara is going to ask a good question. Where did he get all the shlamim from? You said he doesn't have enough. We'll see. Nechasim merubim va'ichle muatim. He has a lot of possessions, but he doesn't have a lot of mouths to feed. It's a small family. So maybe oilas merubay shlamim muatim. So then you bring a lot of burnt offerings and just a few shlamim, a minimal amount of what needs to be eaten. Let's say he has a small family and small amount of possessions. There it says the measurement for what the minimal amount for what you should have is if it's an oila, you bring the value of a ma, and if it's a shlamim, the Chagigah is a value of 2 ma. That's Beis Hillel's opinion. Bishamai was the opposite. This is Beis Hillel's opinion. It's a large family, a lot of mouths to feed. And he also it says you should give according to the blessing that Hashem your God gave to you. That's what you should just bring a lot of everything. Okay. The Gemara asks the obvious question. Shlamim merubim mehechi maisi. Halesle, you told me he doesn't have a lot of funds, and then you tell me, oh, you should bring a lot of shlamim. Like let them eat cake type of comment. This is, oh yeah, he doesn't have the funds. Let him bring a lot of shlamim. Amar Rav Chisda says no. Teifel umevi par gadol. Rav Chisda says he has meiser money that he could use. Let him take from the meiser money, meiser sheni money, and buy a large animal for shlamim. That's Rav Chisda's comment. So what the Mishnah is referring to is joining together. Who held that you're allowed to mix in money? That was Rabbi Yochanan. For the first one, even for the first, that was Rabbi Yochanan's opinion. Rav Chisda would be following Rabbi Yochanan. Amalei Rav Sheshes comments to Rav Chisda, Harei Amru Taiflin Behema LeBehema. We said we add another animal. You combine another animal. Yeah, it sounds like he's commenting Chizkiya's comment to Rabbi Yochanan, that it would be, you can't combine money, you can only combine another animal. That's what it sounds like, but the Gemara is not satisfied with that. It says, my Karmele, what is Rav Sheshes telling Rav Chisda? This is the Gemara talking about two Talmudic sages. The Stamma, the yeshiva is discussing. It says, Ilema hachi kamar, maybe you'll say this was the conversation. Maybe he's making that comment that Rav Chisda made it look like you can add money to the original funds and buy a larger animal. And Rav Sheshes is commenting that you're not allowed to do that. The first animal needs to be entirely from Chulin. And then if you want, add another animal. Maybe that's his comment. Gemara says, he told him the wrong words. He put the emphasis on the wrong point. He tells him, you're allowed to add another animal. He should have said, you're not allowed to add the money. You're not allowed to combine the funds. He didn't tell him that. He just tells him you're allowed to add the animal. If he was telling him that you're not allowed to combine the funds, then let him say you're not allowed to combine the funds. It must be that Rav Sheshes' comment is different. His comment was like this. He says, you're also allowed to add an animal. Now, when we learned Rabbi Yochanan and we learned Chizkiah, we learned that each one was mutually exclusive. Chizkiah says you're only allowed to combine another animal, and Rabbi Yochanan said you're only allowed to combine funds. But the way we explained Rabbi Yochanan is that we wanted everyone to get some of it from Chulin, so every piece of this should have some funds of Chulin in it. The way we explained Chizkiah was that you needed one animal that was entirely Chulin. So each opinion was mutually exclusive. Comes along Rav Sheshes and now is telling Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda says you combine the funds. Rav Sheshes says you can also combine the animal. Who holds that? Who holds that you can do both? Come on, the like Chizkiah, like Rabbi Yochanan. That doesn't fit with Chizkiah or Rabbi Yochanan. It's very kind of the Gemara printers to put both of these sugyas on the same daf, two sides of the same daf. Otherwise, we'd have to go back tomorrow and explain yesterday's machlekes. So, v'chitema, maybe you can say, Amirayehu depligi. Maybe you could say that there is a machlekes Amirayim. However, the machlekes Amirayim would mean Rav Chizkiah and Rabbi Yochanan. However, masnisa like pligi. You can say that the brisa doesn't argue. In other words, we have another brisa that allows both. Yeah. We should really have to look back at the brisa and see what the Gemara is saying. Yeah.
Rav Yochanan is in Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah.
So Rav Sheshes and Rav Chisda
Are in Bavel. Yeah.
So is that part of why they're arguing? Because I mean, there are people in another place, and it's not for sure what.
I don't think so. I don't think that's the issue. We had a statement from Ula. Ula was the traveler. He brought the whole story over for us. He tells us what about this machlekes. We have supports from Brises for each opinion. We think that these supports actually tell us that each opinion is mutually exclusive. The Gemara now is suggesting maybe one of those Brises is not really mutually exclusive. Maybe one of those Brises would support both of them. That's what the Gemara is suggesting now. And it goes like this. Let's take a look. Maybe it was only a machlekes amirayim, but masnisa leipligi. But in the Brisa, you can get both opinions. How does it go like this? And it could actually be a combined opinion. The Gemara says, 1 second. When you told me achila rishayna min achulin, in the opinion of Beis Hillel, and you were telling me that was going to be a support for Chizkiah, we said that the first animal, achila rishayna, the first animal needs to be entirely from chulin, and then afterwards you can use meiser, even on the first day of Yom Tif. That tells me that you're not allowed to combine money. Chizkiah's opinion is that it needs to be separate animals, a chulin animal and a meiser animal. Gemara says, "My achila rishayna." What does it mean, achila rishayna? Shir demei achila rishayna min achulin. That brisa that you thought was a support for Chizkiah, turns out that you know what that brisa is really saying? Not that the entire animal needs to be from chulin. In the first animal, achila rishayna needs to be from chulin. But even in that first animal, I'm still combining money. So according to the brisa, I have both opinions there. I have the opinion of Chizkiah that says I'm allowed to add another animal of Meiser Sheni without any chulin mixed in. And I also have the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan that says I'm allowed to add money, that in the first animal itself, there's a mixture of both. And that's exactly what Rav Sheshis would be telling Rav Chizda. Rav Chizda said, oh, you have to combine money. He says, actually, you can also add another animal. Who holds that you can do both? He's not arguing with Rav Chizda of what you're allowed to do. He's just saying you can also do the other one. Who holds that? Saying the Brisa holds that. Amar Ula. Now we have another discussion here that Ula introduces for us. Tells us a machlekes Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish. Yeah. Amar Ula, Amar Reish Lakish, Hifer Seser Behemoth L'Chagigah. Someone separates 10 animals for his Chagigah. He's going to have a real party. Goes to the Beis Hamikdash and Hikriv Chamish B'Yom Tov Rishon. He offers 5 of them. It's just so much. He can come back on the next day, or maybe Yom Tov Sheni maybe means the last day. The last days, he comes back and he brings the other 5. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Rabbi Yochanan says, no. Even Shapasak Shavena Makriv. You cannot come back later and bring the rest. Rabbi Yochanan says, according to Rashi, it's Bal Taisif. It says in the Torah you should celebrate one day. You can't celebrate another day with the Chagigah. One day of the Chagigah and that's it. Amar Rababa says, there's actually no machlekes here. Depends on the scenario. Yeah. It's interesting. Who's the one that says V'lei pligi amongst in Bavel? It's usually Rav Papa or Abaya gives us the V'lei pligi. Yes, in Eretz Yisrael here we have Rav Abba. It's more like a peaceful type of thing. We see a machlekes, but turns out they're not really arguing. Each one was referring to a certain scenario. Yeah. V'lei pligi. Kan bestam, kan b'mefarsh. It depends what the person said when he was bringing it. If he said, okay, here's 10 animals. So that's problematic to bring it again. It's going to be a violation of Bal Taisif. If it's mefarish, if he said all of these are for the first day, and then he ended up saying, that there wasn't enough time or there was too much or something. This is okay. It's a tashlumin. Remember we had days of tashlumin, you're allowed to make it up. If you didn't bring it the first day, you can bring it. So it's tashlumin for the first day. It's not Bal Taisif. It's all the first day's sacrifices that didn't have a chance to be offered. It's not Bal Taisif. If it was mafarish that it's all for the mafarish means he specified that it's all for the first day, then it's not a problem. If he wasn't mafarish, then it looks like he's celebrating 2 days, which is problematic because it's baltaisa. Yeah. Hi Stam Hechidami. What was the case of Stam when he didn't explain? If what's happened was it became the evening, he didn't have enough time to sacrifice the other 5. So it says, that should not be a problem. It was very obvious. It's not baltaisif. There wasn't enough time. Ella the less loichlen. It must have been that he was afraid it was going to go to waste because he saw there's a lot of meat in this. I'm not going to sacrifice. So it's all going to go to waste. So we'll say over there also, we'll say the reason is because he didn't have enough people to eat it. He didn't have enough mouths to feed. So he left it. It's not because he's supposed to be celebrating 2 days. He's like adding to the Torah. It's because he didn't want it to go to waste. Yeah. So, whoops. Sorry about that. Go ahead. 1 second. I didn't hear. Jonathan, say again.
Didn't we learn that if a carbon was consecrated, then it has to be eaten on that day?
Well, not consecrated, but slaughtered. It needs to be eaten. Yes, the Chagigah is actually 2 days. Yeah, but that's once it's slaughtered, it needs to be eaten. And that's part of our discussion here. Consecrated, you have 3 holidays to bring it.
Okay. So
Slaughtered would give you 2 days. I think the Chagigah of there's one Chagigah, I think that's only 1 day. I think that's the Karban Chagigah Yadalid, which we learned about yesterday. I think we say we want it to be the same as the Karban Pesach, otherwise it would be confusing. I think there was something like that, but otherwise the Chagigah is, I think, a regular Shlamim, which is 2 days with the night in the middle. Yeah, so if he doesn't have enough people to eat it, so that's why they pushed it off. Late tzricha. Nope. You know what the case is? It's necessary. Maybe you divide it like this. Lie. That's not the case. Tzricha, it's necessary. He actually had more time to bring the sacrifices. He actually had more people that could eat it. But what does that say? The fact that he didn't bring it on the first day, it must be that he's leaving it over for the last day because he wants to celebrate again on the last day. This is also logical. Ravin was also a traveler. Ula brought us the first machlekes. Ravin was a traveler. He came to Bavel. He came a little bit later, and he also brought statements of Rabbi Yochanan, and brought statements from Israel, and he explained it. This is mamish what Rabbi Yochanan doesn't agree with. He says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that you're allowed to bring the other 5 on the last day of Yom Tov. It must be Rabab is correct that there really was no machlekes. And Kashana Dadi, it's a contradiction on Rabbi Yochanan. That's a proof because we have a contradiction in Rabbi Yochanan itself. It must be that we're going to resolve it by the same answer that we would say that Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish aren't arguing. Say that it depends what his statement was. Did he say that it's clearly all the first days, or was it? He didn't say anything. Okay. Itmar Nami, we have another statement. Amar Rav Shaman Barab Amar Rabbi Yochanan. It says that we celebrate for the first day, and that's it. Only the first day. Leishanu, that was only taught Shalei Gomar, when it wasn't completed. Now, the way we'll explain this is that the day wasn't completed. When do you say you only celebrate 1 day with the Shlamim, with the Chagigah? That's only if there's still time left in the day. Aval Gomar, but if the day is completed, Chayzer Makriv, then you go back and you can bring it again the following day. Why? Because you didn't have time. My Gamar, what does it mean, Gamar? I explained it already. But Ilema Gamar Kabbanaisav, my Makriv, if it means that he has no more sacrifices left, What do you mean? You bring more tomorrow? There's none left. Elish legamar hayayim means that the day wasn't over. Aval gamar hayayim chayzer makriv. But if there was no time left in the day, then yes, tomorrow you're allowed to bring it back. Okay, we learned the Gemara according to Rashi. Rabbeinu Chananel has another pshat, and his pshat is that you're allowed to sacrifice a carbon chagigah on Yom Tif, even though it's a private sacrifice, because you have a mitzvah to sacrifice on Yom Tif. But let's say you did it already on the first days. Would you be allowed to do it on the second days? Forget about Bal Taisav. It's not a Bal Taisav issue. It's are you allowed to violate Yom Tif to fulfill the mitzvah of Chagigah when you did it already before? That's how Rabbeinu Chananel learns this Gemara. Yeah. Okay, let's leave it over here.
Chikoya, Rabbi, thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah.
Thank you.